The silence in our house was a living thing. It had weight and texture, settling like fine dust on the furniture and clinging to the back of our throats. It was the fifth member of our family, the one who sat at the empty chair at dinner, the one who tucked us into bed at night with a cold, invisible hand. It began the summer Elara turned 7. Before that, our home was a place of chaotic music, of my father's booming laugh, my mother's off-key humming, and Elara's constant bird-like chatter. She was a sunbeam of a child, all scraped knees and dandelion fluff hair. I, at 12, was her self-appointed guardian, her reluctant playmate, her world's steady axis. Then came the visit from Uncle Marcus. He was my mother's younger brother, a man with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, and a scent of stale cigarettes and something sweet, like cheap cologne. He stayed for 2 weeks. When he left, the music in our house died. Elara's innocence wasn't stolen in a single violent act that I witnessed. It was leached away day by day in the shadowed corners of that summer. It was in the way she began to flinch from sudden movements, the way her chatter dwindled to whispers, then to nothing at all. She stopped climbing the oak tree in the backyard. She gave her dolls haircuts, shearing their synthetic hair down to the plastic scalp with my mother's sewing scissors, arranging them in silent, rigid rows facing the wall. The first time I tried to breach the silence, my words felt like stones thrown against a fortress. "Mom," I'd said, watching Elara meticulously line up sugar cubes on the kitchen table, "Elara's quiet." My mother, her back to me, scrubbed a furiously clean countertop. Her shoulders were a tight, sharp line. "She's growing up, Leo. Girls get thoughtful." Her voice was brittle, a thread of glass about to snap. "But she doesn't play anymore." The sponge stilled. She turned, and for a second, I saw a terrifying bleakness in her eyes, a landscape of scorched earth. Then it was gone, replaced by a smile so bright it was a weapon. "Nonsense. We'll buy her a new dolly for her birthday, a pretty one." My father retreated. He became a ghost in his own home, his presence marked only by the indentation on his armchair and the low murmur of the television late at night. His booming laugh was a memory from a different lifetime. If he caught my eye, he'd look away, a deep, furrowed shame etched between his brows. He was a captain who had abandoned his sinking ship, content to watch from a distant shore as the rest of us drowned. The shared silence was our pact. We never spoke of Uncle Marcus. His name was surgically excised from our family history. A photograph of him at my parents' wedding, his arms slung around my mother's shoulders, vanished from the mantelpiece. The silence was our frantic, collective effort to pretend the wound wasn't there, even as we were bleeding out. It was a shared delusion that if we didn't give the monster a name, it couldn't truly exist. But it did exist. It lived in Elara. Her 8th birthday was a masterclass in our family's theater of denial. My mother baked a cake with sickeningly sweet pink frosting. Relatives came, bringing brightly wrapped presents, their conversation loud and hollow, carefully avoiding the small, silent girl at the center of it all. Elara sat on the floor, unwrapping a gift from our grandmother. It was a beautiful porcelain doll with cascading blonde curls and a lace dress. She stared at it, her expression unreadable. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she took the doll by its feet and smashed its smiling face against the corner of the coffee table. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Shards of porcelain skittered across the hardwood floor. My mother's smile faltered, a crack appearing in her own porcelain facade. "Oh, clumsy girl," she chirped, her voice high and strained. "It must have slipped." But Elara hadn't slipped. She looked up, her gaze sweeping over the horrified faces of our family, and for the first time in a year, she spoke. Her voice was a dry, rasping thing, unused and alien. "It's broken," she said, not to anyone in particular, but to the room, to the world. She looked directly at me, her eyes dark and ancient. "You can't fix it." In that moment, the silence between us shifted. It was no longer just an absence of words. It became a language. Her eyes weren't accusing me. They were acknowledging me. She knew I had seen the subtle shifts, the dimming of her light. She knew I was a keeper of the quiet, a sentry at the gate of our terrible secret. Later that night, long after the guests had fled and the broken doll had been swept into a dustpan, I found her in her room. She wasn't crying. She was sitting on her bed, the mutilated dolls around her like a silent, loyal congregation. I sat on the edge of the mattress, the space between us charged with everything we could not say. The smell of dust and old plastic filled the air. I didn't know what to do, what comfort I could possibly offer. My words were useless, poisoned by a year of complicity. So I reached out and took her small, cold hand. I didn't squeeze it. I just held it, a silent anchor in the suffocating stillness. She turned her head and looked at me. Her expression was calm, disturbingly so. It was the face of someone who had traveled to a dark and distant place and had only just returned, leaving a vital part of herself behind. She knew things I could only guess at, horrors I had helped to conceal with my cowardice. Her fingers curled slightly around mine. It wasn't a gesture of comfort or of love, not anymore. It was an agreement, a treaty. We were the sole inhabitants of this blighted landscape, the two children left behind after the war. The innocence stolen from her had been replaced by this grim, shared knowledge, and the silence, our parents' shield, had become our bond, a disturbing, unbreakable chain forged in the ruins of what our family used to be. We would carry it together, forever.